Hello. Experimentation time. This is what I'm calling my prototype version of the reduced projectile speed Occultist. It's currently in prototype because I'm still working out a bunch of the optimization stuff. But in terms of what I was able to do and what you'll probably see is that I'm able to do quite a bit and only have died only about 37 times. I'm farming T16s with full delirium at level 88. It's very good. And I'm extremely grateful to be able to get this incredibly wild and probably will be very expensive if people catch on to the utility of this kind of reduced projectile speed. This amulet is the whole maker of the build because it lets us do this. Lets us make the slowest cats in the world. So with this amulet at 82% reduced projectile speed plus the 10% reduced projectile speed there, I am at negative 92. Where does it say that? Negative 92. And so what I've done is I've put it with Soulrend because the way Soulrend works is that it doesn't apply its dot based on hitting an enemy. It applies its dot when it's in the surrounding area of an enemy. So reducing the projectile speed actually reapplies the dot as long as they're within the area every 0.6 seconds. So I don't have to scale any duration. And if I have this plus return projectile, while it's a little bit faster on the way back, these projectiles last almost a full minute. I think it's between 40 seconds to a minute, depending on whether or not they reach their max distance. And as you can see, these guys take a while, and plus they have homing. They home in on enemies, so you don't have to worry basically at all about having the enemy move out of the way. And so I've got some basic damage stuff. That's the one thing I do need to fix about the build, is the way I've built it is the damage is lacking, and most chaos dot builds will use a replica Dragon Fang to get the +3 levels here and get as many levels as they can somewhere else. I decided, well, because we're trying to elongate the amount of damage over time from each cast, let's play defensive. And while I could have gone the normal CI route, chaos inoculation, that's completely viable. That's another direction. I 100% encourage people that want to play a safer version, because that one is way more tested, to go with that direction. And I'll put a link to a video about someone who's done incursion and ultimatum with a CI Occultist. But because this one had a bunch of life on it, I didn't want to waste a life. And it turns out it was actually a pretty decent choice to go this way, because they added the ward and the lucky block shield. This thing's 100% getting nerfed next league, so I'm enjoying this while it exists. And so basically what we're doing is we're using this plus Yasani's stand belt and an armor and evasion chest piece with this to gain a bunch of ward. We have 5,200 ward. We're also using the Faith Guard to increase the rate at which ward is being restored. I could bump this up to 60%, but it's at 53. And right now, the ward recharges every 1.3 seconds. That's fantastic. So every 1.3 seconds, we break the 5,000 ward. We have right now 64 block, lucky, plus Rumi's flask, which bumps it up to the max. So I have to add a little more max block, but we're getting into the 90s. We're at the 90% mark for block. Plus, we got a pretty decent life pool in the block. I'm scaling life. We got a little bit of armor, a little bit of evasion. The evasion is, it's like 10%. It's barely anything. But I'm also using Temporal Rift. So every time it goes through all this, it like breaks the health. It brings us down to a lower amount, and for some reason, the Immortal Call that triggers when it does a large amount of damage like that doesn't save me. I just bump it up, and it restarts the whole thing. Life goes back to what it was 4 seconds ago. It's fantastic. But basically everything else is pretty standard for your chaos dot scaling. We got this massive wand with +2 the chaos level gem, you know, the empowered. We're at level 25. I'm using a normal one instead of spiral due to mana cost reasons. Spiral just has such a large mana cost, and while it would let us remove the greater multiple projectiles from the equation, it just costs so much mana to properly sustain. I would rather use it on the variety of other auras I use. Malevolence, Tempest Shield, Clarity to help with the mana, and then Aspect of the Crab. Aspect of the Crab is actually really nice because of our lack of determination and our lack of armor. We get a plus 20% physical damage reduction every so often, and because we're blocking so many hits, it's actually up a lot of the time. I'd say on average it's between 5 and 10. That's pretty good. Anything else crazy? We got some basic stuff on the gear. It's mostly life, res. This one is of particular note. Curse with enemies with despair on hit, because we're using the Occultist ascendancy that kills enemies on for a quarter of their life. When cursed, it'll eventually hit someone, and then boom, pops a whole big pack. Now, I'm going to get to the passive tree. We're going to just run through a bunch of this stuff. Very basic stuff. Because we're using Faith Guard, we're just grabbing all the energy shield here to increase our ward. It gives us like another 1,000 ward, these two things. Life, mana, clusters for damage. Basic stuff that most people run. You know, you got the Chaos, and you got the Wicked Pale, Eldritch Inspiration, Vile Vigoration. We come down here for 2 reasons. One, Endurance Charge, and a Impossible Escape with Blood Magic, because bada-ba-bum, it gives us this, and an extrable. 25% chance to gain an Endurance Charge when you're hit. Blocking an attack counts as a hit. So we get Endurance Charge generation. And then we can also grab these nodes over here to increase our chance to block, and you could also grab some other stuff around here, but like I guess if you were trying to do ignite, you could also grab that. Grab some life. We have Eternal Youth over here because I needed a way to get some regeneration. Occultist does not really have any kind of good life regeneration, so instead I grabbed Vile Bastion, grabbed a little bit of Energy Shield, and grabbed Eternal Youth to apply the Energy Shield recharge to life. So now, if it ever goes low, I just wait a second or two, and I'm blocking hits, so it should be fine, and it'll recharge. So that's pretty nice. Some life, reservation. I don't think there's any other crazy interactions to go here. I already talked about most of the stuff. This flask is actually super important. Use when you take a savage hit, and it restores your ward. So that means it hits your ward, it breaks, then you take another hit, and it's a savage hit, and it gets through all the block. Your ward's back up, and you get another effective life health pool to take another hit. So good. It's so good. Plus, the gain charges when you hit by an enemy. And because we know blocking hits counts as getting hit, this thing's up basically all the time. Things I do need to figure out. And, you know, I've been selling the build. I got to admit, the reason why it's a prototype is because it still needs to solve a bunch of issues. Because it's not perfect. And that's because block is not perfect. You know, you get lucky 90% block. That's not 90% damage reduction. That's not the same as Grace, because Grace has an entropy scale. It's the hot hand fallacy, where just because you're at 95% block, there's going to be a select few times where enemies just go through your block and they just hit you 4 or 5 times because you rolled bad. And that's going to happen the more you play. And that's what the hot hand fallacy is. So I have to increase my max resistances because right now I'm only at 76, 76, and 68. I have to remove basically as many damage over time things as I possibly can. Damage over time is your biggest issue in this build. Damage over time will kill you. It is the one thing that will consistently kill you. Poison, bleed, ignite, you want to avoid as much as you can. I'm grabbing this one to remove being frozen, reduce stun chance because you also get stunned pretty often in this build. This one to remove burning ground, reduce ignite duration on you. I currently have a flask to remove bleeding and corrupted blood. I'm trying to get Jewel. I'm trying to get a Watcher's Eye to remove the ability to get poisoned while using Malevolence. Trying to figure out how to get rid of bleeding, but because of the endurance generation and the crab aspect, I don't think I will need to. But that's the kind of stuff I still have to work out. Have to increase the health pool because obviously we need a lot more life because not everything here is like perfect ward. There's like, yeah, not perfect life rolls on everything, that kind of thing. Also have to increase damage because it's a chaos stop build. As I've mentioned, it has an issue with bossing. It just does. And then over here, I've got Blight of Atrophy to help with bossing. And it's connected with Infused Channeling to give a little bit extra less damage. But there's a bunch of issues to go with the build. But, you know, for the most part, it's pretty sick that it's like so defensive. Like it doesn't matter, you just run through Delirium. And as you're gonna see, it's more so built for like rituals and ultimatum and like simulacrum, the kind of stand around in a circle kind of thing, because that's the benefit. Because if I just set a bunch down and stop casting, yeah, I see right there. I didn't want to risk Coral. It hits, it explodes, bam. So I'm going to be trying to iterate the build more. Going to be trying to, you know, get it better, optimize it and all that, improve the rolls on my gear. But for now, I just wanted to show it off. And thanks for liking it. If you have any questions, let me know. I'm going to be updating the build when I got time because I got a real life job and this has been a pet project. Bye bye. Do the YouTube stuff, like and subscribe, all that.